Today, the company's new president is set to be sworn in. But as soon as I spotted Matt, the department manager, he rushed over with a tense look on his face, as if something was wrong. Matt, was there any prior notification that high school graduates wouldn't be allowed to attend the event today? When I tried to argue, he simply chuckled condescendingly. Do you think we would send out a notification to the entire company just for one person like you, he said, then told me to leave immediately. I remained silent, unable to say anything. I stepped out of the hotel and went into a nearby cafe, just to find a quiet moment to think and wait for the right opportunity. About half an hour later, my phone rang. It was Thomas. Yes, Thomas, it's me. Hello. His tone wasn't the warm greeting it usually was. Where are you? I'm in a cafe nearby, I replied. Matt told me to leave. He sighed. Ugh. Anyway, come back here immediately. I nodded, but before doing so, I decided to sit back for a while, enjoy my meal, and let my mind relax. After finishing my meal, I returned to the hotel, ready to face whatever was ahead, something uncertain, but one that would surely change everything. My name is Alex. I am 35 years old. I am a consistent employee of a major manufacturer of electrical apparatus. One day, the decision was made to replace the president at my company. This was nothing unusual, as the founder of large organizations, usually elderly, retires and hands over the position to their son. Employees viewed Thomas, the company's new president, with affection. He had previously held the roles of director and vice president and was a familiar face. The transition went smoothly and was warmly received by all employees. The inauguration of the new president was then turned into a grand event. Not only business partners and industry leaders were invited, but all employees were as well. As an employee at the hotel, it seemed only natural for me to attend the inauguration of the new president. However, when I arrived at the entrance, I ran into Matt, the department manager. A sense of unease immediately rose within me, and that feeling proved to be right. Alex, I can't believe my eyes when I see you arriving in such a poor outfit, Matt sneered, with a condescending smile. Truly a thick-skinned person. What people say about people like you is something I've become accustomed to hearing: sarcasm and insults. Matt often brags about his education at a prestigious university and looks down on those with less education, such as recent high school graduates. As a result, he treated me cruelly simply because I was a recent high school graduate. It was part of my daily life: accusations and humiliation. I could only remain silent, feeling regretful that I didn't have custom-made suits like Matt. I primarily possess suits from the suit sector of department stores, all of which were acquired at discounted prices. Nevertheless, I frequently ship them for dry cleaning and iron them to eliminate any wrinkles. Despite my efforts to avoid appearing unprofessional to others, I do not believe that my appearance was so unprofessional as to distinguish me from the other employees who were passing through the entrance. I am aware that any counterargument I present will be met with a 100-fold response, therefore, it is advisable to refrain from addressing the matter. I promptly offered an apology and endeavored to bypass him. However, at that precise instant, I was wondering, where do you believe you are headed? The inauguration ceremony of the president will feature a significant number of high-profile figures. I am aware that an uncultured, impoverished high school graduate such as yourself should not be permitted entry. You are not welcome here, therefore, you should depart immediately. Matt firmly waved his hand in an attempt to clear away something filthy after he had said this. It appeared that he was in a foul mood that day, as he was persistently pestering me more than I had anticipated. The fact that all employees are entitled to attend the inauguration ceremony of the new president is a well-known fact. I am unable to simply comply with an order from my immediate superior, regardless of its nature. The employee newsletter that was disseminated prior to the event did not mention the prohibition of high school graduates from attending. Matt smirked and remarked, clearly, there is only one high school graduate who is an idiot in a large corporation like ours. Why should we make a special announcement exclusively for you? Ignorant individuals such as yourself would only serve to undermine our organization's credibility, therefore, we request that you depart immediately. I attempted to continue my rebuttal, but he exhibited no indication of listening. "Hello, how desperately do you wish to attend? Are you merely present for the dinner?" This is the reason why individuals who are ordinary employees, such as yourself, are so unfortunate. You are unable to find a seat here, so please return home and consume some subpar, inexpensive cuisine. It appeared that he was genuinely opposed to my entering the building, regardless of the circumstances. I requested affirmation for the final time. "Do I have it right that your directive to return home is intended as a direct order?" "Certainly, of course. Please refrain from requiring me to reiterate my remarks. It is not appropriate for a high school graduate such as yourself." Matt asserted that with conviction. I was enthusiastic about the opportunity to attend the inauguration ceremony for the new president as one of the employees. Nevertheless, with my immediate superior's directive, I was unable to force my way through. "I comprehend. I will adhere to the directive." I retreated after uttering those remarks. He observed me depart with a triumphant demeanor. "You are no longer required to visit the organization. The presence or absence of individuals such as yourself is of no consequence." I exited the hotel venue after carefully listening to those remarks. Subsequently, I entered a nearby cafe and promptly acquired a straightforward meal, as I was currently experiencing hunger. I opted to remain in close proximity to the hotel in order to ensure that I did not miss any critical communications as time progressed. I ordered a strong coffee and spaghetti Napolitan before settling into my seat to take a break. Today, Matt was exceedingly persistent and insulting. It is possible that he was experiencing a sense of positivity as a result of the inauguration ceremony of the highly esteemed new president. I am accustomed to experiencing derision as a result of my high school graduation. However, I am skeptical that I have ever caused any issues at work due to my limited educational heritage. Despite the frustration, I have been dedicating years of effort to demonstrating my capabilities through my accomplishments. Nevertheless, I have come to the realization that it is significantly more challenging to alter Matt's perspective than I had originally anticipated. I have been living independently with my mother since the age of 5, following the disappearance of my biological father. She has been responsible for my upbringing entirely on her own. At the age of 20, my mother became pregnant with me and married without any prior work experience. Therefore, despite the fact that she was obligated to raise me independently, it was challenging for her to secure a full-time position that was well-paying. She ensured that I could pursue my education to the fullest by balancing part-time employment and saving money. Nevertheless, the burden on her health resulted in her inability to work when I was 17 years old. I was aware from a tender age that we did not have the financial resources to support my attendance at a university. Therefore, I was compelled to acknowledge that I would be required to work as a high school graduate, despite the fact that my peers were entering university as if it were a natural progression. I never regarded myself as unfortunate, despite the numerous times my mother apologized to me. I had personally observed the numerous endeavors she had undertaken on my behalf up until that point. Presently, it is my turn. In order to assist my mother, I aspire to support her. I have been contemplating that. I began working part-time at a nearby convenience store after graduating from high school. I was aware that I would not be able to secure any decent employment opportunities with a high school diploma alone, as I was not particularly intelligent. Similar to my mother, I maintained numerous part-time occupations. I would occasionally learn boxing at the gym owned by the proprietor of one of my part-time jobs, which was the only respite I found before I devoted my leisure time to working tirelessly every day. The proprietor expressed a desire to instruct me and stated that my physique was suitable. This was the reason. I did not perform exceptionally well, however, it was the first time I had been as invested in a sport as I had been since my time in the high school club, prior to my mother's illness. It was my sole source of pleasure, as the sensation of becoming stronger with each exertion was enjoyable. However, I was unable to continue expressing such sentiments by the time I reached the age of 19. My mother's condition deteriorated, necessitating her hospitalization. I had been assiduously saving the money I earned from my employment, but it was insufficient. I came to the realization that I required additional funds in light of the potential for a prolonged hospitalization in the future. Subsequently, I assumed additional responsibilities and discontinued my boxing career. Although I labored outside every day, with the exception of sleep and mealtimes, it was still insufficient. I ultimately found myself resorting to wagering as a result of my desperation. Starting at the age of 20, I began to devote my leisure time to the horse racing track. I experienced periods of success and failure, however, my winning percentage was significantly higher. Gradually, the notion of genuinely working began to appear absurd to me. Is it advisable for me to resign from all of my positions and dedicate myself exclusively to horse racing? One day, as I began to entertain such unstable notions, I proceeded to the racetrack as usual. I confidently placed my wager and took my seat after conducting a comprehensive analysis using my own methods. The race proceeded as expected, and there was no moment of suspense that caused my palms to perspiration. I discovered a peculiar sense of tranquility in the midst of the crowd's enthusiastic chanting. I should have been more concerned, despite the fact that I was in severe financial difficulty. I may have harbored an unusual sense of self-assurance that asserted, I am capable of accomplishing this. Next, my attention was abruptly drawn to the individual seated next to me. The individual sitting next to me and I were the only ones who remained seated, barely moving, while the majority of the spectators stood up, shouted, and applauded. That is why, for some reason, I was captivated by that individual. I briefly observed a man in his late 20s to early 30s who was dressed in a suit that appeared to be of high quality. His hair was carefully styled. In all honesty, he appeared to be entirely out of place in the environment. He did not appear to be in urgent need of money, which prompted me to question his presence. Was he merely engaging in horse racing as a pastime, irrespective of the prize money? Perhaps he found us amusing, observing us as we attempted to earn money through wagering. Even as I observed him, his true intentions were entirely opaque. Afterward, our gazes intersected. No, I must have been gazing excessively. I promptly diverted my gaze, as I felt uncomfortable. Nevertheless, the man initiated a conversation and smiled cordially. Greetings, this is my initial visit to this location, and I am uncertain as to what to anticipate. Was it apparent that I was not in the right place? I was taken aback by the man's humility, despite his apparent wealth and age over my own. I was taken aback by the fact that I found myself confiding in the senior man I had just met. Then, we became acquainted and conversed until we exhausted our wagering tickets. The primary topic of discussion was horse racing, my distinctive analysis methods, and my sentiments regarding the sport, which may appear to be trivial. Nevertheless, I experienced a profound sense of relief, as these were subjects that I was unable to discuss with individuals in my personal life, such as my mother or acquaintances. I was able to communicate candidly and freely because I was aware that we would never meet again. I believed that would conclude the matter. However, I unexpectedly encountered the individual again in a surprising manner several hours after our departure from the racetrack. The community in which I have resided is not particularly renowned for its security. It is the type of rural town in which one might anticipate encountering characters straight out of retro television programs, youthful individuals who appear to be at home in a gang. I have never been the victim of such incidents, as I have always had a somewhat intimidating appearance and a decent physique. However, as I was departing the racetrack and proceeding to the nearest station, I observed a salaryman being robbed. In all honesty, I would prefer not to become involved in any trouble. However, witnessing such a clear incident transpire in front of me renders it impossible for me to disregard it. Which activity are you currently engaged in? I will contact the authorities. In response to my voice, the criminal's attention naturally shifted to me. Do you have an issue, young man? Surpass it. After deftly evading the thug's strike, I promptly responded with a punch that targeted a vulnerable area, causing him to collapse immediately. Despite the fact that I had not boxed in years, I found it effortless to dispatch a few criminals due to my extensive experience in the ring. I have been rescued. I am extremely grateful. I was taken aback when I realized that the individual who had said that to me was the same man with whom I had conversed at the racecourse earlier. Naturally, the individual appeared to be quite taken aback. He appeared to be exceedingly appreciative of me and extended an invitation to me to meet for a beverage as a gesture of gratitude. We entered a nearby bar, and I recognized him as a director of a significant corporation that I was even familiar with when he gave me his business card. I was unable to escape the sensation that our worlds were fundamentally different, despite the fact that our conversation flowed effortlessly and a sense of camaraderie developed. Nevertheless, the time I spent with that individual, who was incredibly approachable and did not make any distinctions based on class or age, was incredibly enjoyable and did not cause me to sense any difference in our backgrounds or ages. I was unaware that we had become drinking companions, and we have occasionally maintained contact and shared beverages since then. I was increasingly fatigued by the stress of managing multiple part-time jobs, and I was afflicted by a slight anxiety about whether it was appropriate to entrust my life to horse racing. Although my personal life was in a state of disarray during this period, I was able to forget about the challenges when I was with him. A specific event transpired on a specific day. As is customary, we were conversing casually while imbibing when he mentioned something that was truly unbelievable. "Would you be interested in joining our organization?" I was taken aback by the news. I was briefly startled by the literal meaning of those words, however, as an individual from the lowest echelon of society, I was unable to comprehend being welcomed into a company of such prestige. Regardless of our proximity, I suspected that the imbibing session may have been a prank, or that I had misheard. Nevertheless, it appeared that neither of those scenarios was the case, and he appeared to be legitimately sincere about inviting me to the company. "No, please, refrain from proceeding. I have previously stated that I possess only a high school diploma and have not previously held a full-time position. I am grateful for your compassion and comprehension regarding my financial difficulties, however, I am unable to provide any assistance." I declined, stating as such. "I certainly appreciate your company as a drinking companion, however, I believe it is unwise to combine our friendship with our professional endeavors." Subsequently, he clarified the matter. He discussed with me the business acumen he discovered during our discussions. I was unable to possess any knowledge of business as a high school graduate. I was unable to embrace it, regardless of how much I trusted my drinking companion. I concurred with that assessment. Nevertheless, the individual in question stated the following. "I was at the RAC track out of curiosity when we first encountered each other, but I was feeling quite overwhelmed by the challenge of achieving results in that environment. And then you said this to me. Would you like a recommendation from me? I suppose it is about not exerting oneself excessively in order to generate revenue. Impure thoughts interfere when you purchase with the intention of earning a profit, rendering it impossible to make accurate predictions. I am of the opinion that it is superior to proceed in a composed manner. Despite the fact that the immediate returns are negligible, it is more advantageous in the long term." At that moment, I came to the realization that I had not yet resolved the issue of reconciling with my own emotions, despite my extensive study of business management. In all honesty, I had forgotten that I had said such a thing. Additionally, I experienced a sense of strain as a result of being expected to possess business acumen solely based on that single occurrence. Management is not solely concerned with knowledge. It pertains to instinct. It is certain that you possess that as well. By all means, it is permissible to disclose your limitations. I am not requesting that you immediately become involved in management. I would prefer that you acquire sales experience at this time, and subsequently evaluate your opinion of our work. In the event that you develop a desire to remain with us and make a greater contribution, I hope that you will eventually contemplate joining our management team and helping us." In all seriousness, he stated that. This conversation brought me immense joy and appreciation. I still required a substantial sum of money to support my mother's hospital expenses. However, the sheer exhaustion of working continuously every day was causing me to reach my limits. However, I was unable to forego earning a living. The possibility of winning the windfall in horse racing intrigued me. I was consumed by a profound sense of anxiety regarding my financial stability as I entertained such a fantastical concept. The opportunity to become a full-time employee at a major corporation was a fantasy come true, regardless of how it was arranged. Nevertheless, my status as a high school graduate continued to be the most significant source of anxiety for me. That individual perceived my anxiety and confided in me that diploma material is worthless. Personally, I have only completed technical high school. So I made up my mind. I have been endeavoring to meet those expectations for the past 12 years since I made that decision. This initiated my interaction with President Thomas. My phone rang as I completed eating my spaghetti and sipped on my coffee. "Greetings, Thomas." He responded to my call with a monotone voice. "It is not hello. Currently, where are you located?" Even after I joined the organization, Thomas and I continue to be drinking companions. We have maintained a cordial relationship as a family since his marriage 10 years ago. Therefore, I believe that I have a fairly comprehensive comprehension of the ambience of his personal life. Yet, I have never observed him appear so deflated. I am currently located at a cafe that is in close proximity to the accommodation. Manager Matt ordered me to vacate the premises due to the absence of a seat designated for high school graduates, as I previously communicated via email. Consequently, I departed. Thomas sighed in a manner that was somewhat relieved upon hearing my remarks. It is somewhat revitalizing, or rather, what can I say? It is advantageous to submit to one's immediate superior. However, from today forward, things will be different, correct? Sure, you could have stated, "I am now a director, so I am able to comply with your directives." Certainly, it is as he stated. I have been appointed as a director, as I had previously stated upon my arrival at the organization. Concurrently, Thomas assumes the position of president. Matthew, who has been making sarcastic remarks to me for the duration of this period, will now be my subordinate. However, the mere changing of the position does not imply that I will alter my own behavior. Therefore, I was unable to summon the fortitude to be excessively assertive. Nevertheless, I could not suppress my desire to astound and humble Matt. Today is also your inauguration speech as the vice president and director, as you await Thomas's call at a nearby cafe. Please return immediately after you have finished your coffee. Thomas provided me with instructions. I immediately returned to the hotel after finishing my curry, as a result of his remarks. Even from a distance, the expression on Matt's face when I was introduced as the new director was nearly ludicrous. The relationship between Thomas and me was unknown to anyone in the company. The venue was filled with astonishment when I was introduced. Nevertheless, Matt's response was the most notable of all. He appeared pallid and agitated, as if he regretted his recent verbal assaults on me, despite his ignorance. I did not intend to engage in any form of power play or revenge, however, I hoped that this occurrence would prompt him to contemplate his actions. Although it is undeniable that I, a high school graduate, was the one who endured the most humiliation, it was evident that other employees, including those with less formal education than Matt, were also experiencing distress. As the vice president and director, I am committed to not only demonstrating the business acumen that Thomas anticipates, but also fostering an environment that is conducive to the productivity of all employees, irrespective of their educational background. In my opinion, my status as a high school graduate is precisely the reason for the unique contributions I can make. Subsequently, Matt, the department chief, was found guilty of obstructing my inauguration ceremony with selfish lies and was accused of harassment by numerous employees. In my case, I refrained from personally participating and instead provided testimony regarding my personal experiences. I declined to participate in the meeting that was convened to determine his sanction. Consequently, he was demoted to a security officer position and transferred to a regional factory, which were severe penalties in light of his exceptional capabilities. I trust that this will serve as a reminder to him of the significance of his approach to work, rather than being evaluated solely on the basis of his education and heritage. In my capacity as a director, I am still a novice. I am acquiring the necessary skills from my predecessor, Thomas, and am progressively enhancing my abilities. My education level as a high school graduate remains constant regardless of whether I am a director or a vice president. Nevertheless, no longer is there anyone who disparages me for it. I am of the opinion that this is due to the fact that individuals are currently more interested in my methodology for completing tasks than in my educational background. I am resolute in my commitment to continue contributing to the best of my ability, without guilt over my educational background, and to make the most of my current capabilities. Oh, what a nostalgic sensation I am experiencing today. Thomas and I were in the car after concluding our pleasantries to clients. Upon passing by a horse racing track that was familiar to us, we resolved to pay a visit and relive nostalgia. I never foresaw that we would form such a close working relationship when we first encountered one another here. His words struck a chord with me on a profound level. "You are correct," I stated. At that time, he stated that I possessed business acumen. However, I am genuinely appreciative of his assistance during my most vulnerable period. It is impossible to express my gratitude to him in sufficient terms. He was instrumental in ensuring that my mother's hospitalization was conducted without incident, and her significant surgery was successful. Presently, she is enjoying a happy and healthy existence. Even more recently, she shed tears of delight upon learning that I had been appointed as a director. She comprehended the endeavors I had undertaken. Ultimately, we both suffered losses on that particular day. There was no issue with experiencing nostalgic emotions while visiting the racetrack. However, I was motivated to succeed by his encouragement to introduce my horse racing methodology to the organization, as I had exerted myself to attend. I regret that we were unsuccessful. I stated this in response to my unprompted contrition. Thomas responded, "I am not concerned with generating profits. That is not the crux of the matter. I place the highest value on a dedication to confronting issues with honesty and sincerity." Thomas continued to reassure me in front of us, whether it was because he sensed my emotions or not, and he promised to assist me in any way in his power. Right now, I am eager to fully commit myself to my task in order to be of assistance to Thomas.